Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. We don't have an anniversary today, so what I want to do is go over the top 10 signs that an abortion facility is not safe. Now, of course, I'd rather you not go to any abortion facility. I'd certainly rather your loved one, whoever, not go to any abortion facility. I'd rather you go to a pregnancy resource center where they're actually going to help you get your life in order. But if you or your loved one is hell-bent on an abortion, don't wind up being one of the anniversaries that I talk about, okay? And abstracting thousands of abortion injury and death cases has taught me a few patterns about how to spot a seedy clinic or a quack abortionist. Now remember, you still enter at your own risk. That National Abortion Federation logo or Planned Parenthood logo is not a guarantee that this place is safe. If you follow my blog or you follow this channel, you know that there are plenty of appalling things going on behind those signs. It's just these signs should set alarm bells ringing. Go somewhere else if you're insisting that an abortion is the answer. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to investigate before you go in. I've plugged the Abortion Docs website. Good, bad, and neutral, they will post anything they can get about any abortion practitioner or facility. They'll put that they got some kind of award or that there was an inspection and no deficiencies were found. So you are going to get an unbiased sampling of documents. Now, some of these things might seem so outrageous that you'd wonder how any place can operate doing these things. And you might marvel that women don't just turn around and walk out the door when they see these things. But all I can say is I've seen the documentation myself. These kinds of things can and do happen. And I think a lot of that is because the mantra of safe and legal has led to a false sense of security. A lot of women are going to just dismiss their fears about the facility or the doctor because they assume that somebody must be overseeing the place or it wouldn't be openly operating. And this is not necessarily the case. So in the order that you're most likely to spot them, number one, the person who answers the phone when you call for an appointment verifies your pregnancy and tells you how many weeks pregnant you are. You cannot make a diagnosis over the phone, for one thing, and even professional pregnancy tests, much less the ones you buy in the grocery store, can give false positives. And for another thing, even with an examination, a practice doctor can be several weeks off in his or her estimate of how far a pregnancy has progressed. There are some facilities that pay the doctors on a sliding scale based on how advanced the pregnancy is, and the determination is typically made by measuring the fetal foot against a chart. So if that kind of accuracy is necessary in order to pay the doctor, how can they do your informed consent and your counseling if they're just making a guess over the phone? Sign number two that this is not a safe place. The pro-lifers outside are handing out copies of lawsuits against the facility or the doctor, or any other documents they might find. Autopsy reports from women who died there, horrible inspection reports. And this one shouldn't need elaboration, but women have walked into clinics, copies of these lawsuits in their hands, and climbed on the table anyway. And this is probably because the time they actually arrive at the clinic for their abortion, they've gotten into this tunnel blind, just let's get this over with mindset. They've turned off their emotions. They've turned off their critical thinking skills. They're just, let's get this over with. So it's a good idea to bring a companion along with you. Get a promise from that companion that they will get you the heck out of Dodge if there's any alarming signs. And anything the pro-lifers give you, hand off to your friend to look over. Sign number three, they're asking for payment in full up front before they do any examination or counseling. And as I said in number one, how can they know how far advanced the pregnancy is without an ultrasound? Sorry, there was an interruption there. If they don't know how far advanced your pregnancy is, they cannot properly do informed consent about the risks, okay? The risks vary according to how far advanced the pregnancy is. Sign number four is you get vague, reassuring answers to your questions. Now, this might not mean quackery. It might just be paternalism, or it might just be a sales pitch. But either way, you are being deprived of your right to make an informed decision. Any discussion of risk that doesn't cover failed abortion, hemorrhage, infection, or post-abortal syndrome, which is when the uterus fills with clots, is at a minimum trying to gloss over the risks and just sell the abortion. Okay? And the opposite end of the spectrum is they give you, pages and pages and pages of legalese about this risk, this risk, that risk that they know nobody's going to read. They're just trying to protect themselves from getting sued. Okay? You want to ask them about their emergency procedures. If they can't tell you what hospital you'll be taken to or what ambulance service they call, odds are nobody there actually knows what to do in emergency. Also, ask questions about the fetus. And I know this is not something that you want to be talking about or thinking about when you're sitting in an abortion clinic, but if what they tell you about the fetus doesn't jibe with what you might find at, say, baby center or parents or what to expect, they are not being honest with you. How can you trust them with your life when they won't give you truthful answers to simple questions? Sign number 5 is you hear other patients moaning or screaming. Obviously, that place is not using adequate pain management. So you got to ask yourself, what else are they skimping on? And you also have to wonder what kind of injuries are happening, because if the woman is squirming around on the table because she's in pain, they're going to poke a hole in her uterus. That is not where you want to be. Sign number 6 is the facility appears dirty or disorganized. Okay? An abortion is a surgical procedure with inherent risks. If they are not keeping the waiting room, counseling area, restrooms, and hallways clean and sanitary, they are probably not keeping the scrub room, procedure rooms, and other areas clean and sanitary either. You would lose your lunch looking at some of these abortion clinics that they stay open. State doesn't care. Kermit Gosnell's clinic had flea-infested cats roaming around, crapping on the floors. Okay, and the state didn't close them down. Sign number 7 is they can't describe the qualifications of the staff that are attending to you. Some places doctor might only be on paper. Okay, you can't be sure unless you know that that person doing your abortion actually is a doctor. Some places, like Thomas Tucker's clinic in Alabama, he was so dangerous that the staff thought the patients were safer if they did the abortions themselves. If you can't get an answer to where did you go to medical school, where did you do your residency, as quickly as you would be able to answer where you went to high school, you might not want to let that person stick sharp things inside you. And don't take it for granted that the person administering anesthesia knows what he or she is doing. Abortion clinics have been caught letting a hand holder, a receptionist, and even a janitor administer general anesthesia. Okay? If the person standing by your head about to administer drugs can't say that he or she is an anesthesiologist or a CRNA and say where they went to school, you might wind up being yet another anesthesia coma or death. Don't assume that just because the place is operating openly means the staff are actually qualified. Sign number 8, okay, you've gone through with the abortion. It's over. They are not monitoring you properly in the recovery room. At the very least, they should put that little pulse oximeter on your finger and be checking your vital signs when you get there and every 10 to 15 minutes afterward. And there should be a nurse in the room. Ask her where she went to nursing school. Okay? If you're not being monitored and you're not sure that the recovery room is being overseen by a nurse, you need to be ready to call 911 and get help for yourself if you start to become alarmed at your systems. Women have died right in the recovery room because their pleas for help were ignored or were handled by somebody who didn't know what to do. And the last situation is after you go home. When you call for follow-up, you can't get through to a human being or one that will take you seriously. And especially in facilities that rely on circuit riders, there might not be anybody on staff that has a clue about how to deal with complications, or the phone might even ring to an answering machine. In the case of Leroy Carhart with Jennifer McKenna Morbelli, when her family tried to call for help, they got the answering machine to the Carhart equestrian supply business. They didn't even get a medical answering machine. Okay? So if you try to call with aftercare questions and you can't get a human, or you get somebody who just reassures you there's no problem, seek care elsewhere. If your symptoms aren't too alarming, maybe you can go to your family doctor or your OBGYN. If they are, if you're having abdominal pain, fever, excessive bleeding, go to the emergency room and bring any paperwork that you were given on discharge. Delays while trying to reach somebody who will direct you to proper aftercare can lead to disaster or death. So these are the top 10 signs that you are not dealing with a properly qualified, properly operating abortion facility, and your life is in danger.